Hello, welcome back to Statman Dave Clips. Today we're going to be taking a look at how Jack Grealish fits in at Manchester City. £100 million. We're going to take the Aston Villa man to the Etihad, but where will Guardiola play him? How will tactically fit in with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, and maybe even Harry Kane? Of course, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and like that goddamn video. Anyway, let's dive in. So let's jump over to Sam Lee of The Athletic, of course, to talk about the transfer news. City on the verge of completing the Jack Grealish move for £100 million. A huge deal for the club and a real statement. A huge move for Grealish too, and one he was very keen to make. This, of course, comes after a lot of speculation that the Aston Villa man will be on the move either last summer or this summer. But I think the big question we're going to analyse how he'd fit into Manchester City. But first and foremost, let's take a look at how he statistically profiles and what he is as a player. For me, Jack Grealish is very much a wide playmaker, a player that receives the ball out wide before creating. At Aston Villa, probably looks best when he's playing on that left-hand side, and that's where he's really rose to promise over the last few seasons. I do like him at number 10, but I feel out wide for Villa was the perfect place to play Jack Grealish. For the side, he led them for assists, shot-creating actions, goal-creating actions, dribbles, progressive passes, progressive carries, chances created, carries into the final third, carries into the box, passes into the final third, and passes into the box. Jack Grealish statistically is your perfect playmaker. A man that can not only carry the ball into the final third, but play those passes into the penalty area. Of course, last season was a bit of a tough one for Jack Grealish, an injury-hit season. Didn't play much after Christmas, but still came away with 6 goals and 10 assists. The big thing that you're looking at in terms of what he could bring City is that duality and creativity. Of course, City have the best playmaker in the Premier League in Kevin De Bruyne, and now they're buying the second best from Aston Villa in Jack Grealish. In terms of those metrics we mentioned before, the carrying and so forth, Jack Grealish ranks number 1 in the Premier League for progressive carries and carries into the final third. So that could be something that he does for Manchester City, receives the ball in a deeper area, maybe from central midfield, maybe out wide, gets them into that danger zone where they can create through the likes of Grealish, Phil Foden, and Kevin De Bruyne. But let's take a look at one of his standout games of the season. Of course, that came in the 7-2 victory over Liverpool. Jack Grealish, the perfect number 10 score on SofaScore. He ended the game with 2 goals and 3 assists. But the interesting side about that was the position that he frequently took up. At times, it was behind Liverpool's right fullback, Trent Alexander-Arnold, in free space where he could get his head up and dribble at that weak underbelly that Liverpool had last season. When we're thinking the movement that Ollie Watkins had as well, driving wide, getting his head up, looking for that spinning in behind from the Aston Villa centre forward and Ollie Watkins. Perfect stuff. But very much the game of the season, not only those crazy goals and assist stats we mentioned there. 5 chances created, 2 out of 2 of his accurate long balls completed, 3 shots. He won 4 out of his 5 ground duels and won 3 out of 3 of his tackles. Very impressive statistics. So that's a bit stylistically how Jack Grealish played for Aston Villa last season. The performance against Liverpool was a massive highlight of his season. But let's now take a look at how he'll fit in at Manchester City. First and foremost, for me, City's strongest 11 is on screen right now. Potentially, you could throw Zinchenko instead of Cancelo into the starting 11. But that's what you got at the back end of the season when they're really fighting for that Champions League trophy that eventually they lost to Chelsea in the final. The big thing with this setup, of course, you've got that flexibility and fluidity in positioning and so forth. Of course, Phil Foden had a great run in the Champions League and a great back end to the season. So City have got to be building around him. But let's take first and foremost, looking at City. Obviously, the key part of City over the last few years has been the use of 3/8 or central midfielders. City, of course, defending a 4-4-2, very much attack with 3 at the back, 2 in midfield, and then very much a front 5. That has been, something that Guardiola has done for the last few seasons. In terms of the chat with Pep Guardiola, he's going to want him to get into the side in a playmaking position. Of course, for Man City, you could argue that the playmaking positions are in central midfield, where, you're thinking the wide players more make the movement off the ball, look to finish, look to, play that last pass, whereas Grealish, you're thinking he's got to get a lot of the football. So for Man City, I think the biggest position that he's going to play for them, of course, is in central midfield. Ilkay Gundogan had a great season goal scoring, City's top scorer in the league. But with City needing to move on and again hit the heights of winning the Champions League, I think Jack Grealish comes in that central midfield area. We're looking at City, you know, we look at the difficulty of playing all these attacking players and then getting them into the same lineup. Instantly, what City could do with Grealish, with Kevin De Bruyne, is play 2-3-8s behind behind a false nine, behind a number 10. You know, equally we could see Sterling come in and play on the left, and Foden very much facilitate that central role. I think the fluidity between that triangle could be absolutely crazy with Foden, with Jack Grealish, with Kevin De Bruyne, all interchanging positions and getting on the ball in certain areas. I think the one thing that's a bit of a concern for this shape, of course, is the lack of protection in central midfield. Jack Grealish is a number 10 in a way. Phil Foden is a number 10. Of course, Kevin De Bruyne is number 10. How are they going to balance that out? One of the big things that City did really well last season was have a back three that usually consisted of Diaz, John Stones and Kyle Walker, Rodri at the base, and then someone would join Rodri at times. It would be Gundogan at times. It would be the sort of inverted fullback, be it Zinchenko, or more commonly, what we expect from this setup and system is Cancelo in that central area. Of course, that could be right-sided, could be left-sided, but a key part of City was to have those kind of two defensive midfielders to really protect that back three. But that would allow Jack Grealish to play higher at the pitch and get on the ball in those areas, but also interchange positions. I think secondly, we could look at Grealish being deployed in a wide area. Of course, he is a wide playmaker, as Howard, described him at Aston Villa. Of course, that is going to change at Manchester City, but we could see Grealish still being used in that sort of wide left position, maybe in a sense of having a Zinchenko maybe, or a Cancelo back in the side, but Ilkay Gundogan coming into the 11. The interesting side with that, again, I think the super fluidity of the City side is interesting. Maybe there's not as much fluidity between those forward lines as much as we've seen Ilkay Gundogan take up that sort of goal-scoring position, especially last season. But maybe in the base as well, where we could see João Cancelo playing in that inside left position and Gundogan being evolved in a deeper position to get on the ball and play forward. In terms of for Grealish from that area, what we've seen at Villa is him receiving the ball and then driving in. Of course, City at the moment, Sergio Aguero is gone, but Harry Kane could join the club. And I think that's where we might see the best out of Jack Grealish in this system and this setup, with a centre forward, a target that he can play to, so he can drive inside, and see the movement of Harry Kane. Frequently saw Grealish cutting in, Ollie Watkins running the channel and getting in behind defences, something that could frequently happen with Grealish and Harry Kane at Manchester City. The interesting side there, of course, the balance of Ilkay Gundogan is probably a little bit better than Grealish playing in that sort of 3-8 position. But could also, allow a lot of fluidity in the final third in there. You're thinking Sterling's very good in those positions, a very good finisher, gets a lot of chances. Ferran Torres as well, clean finisher, could be used as that kind of like freer forward, that sort of like advanced forward that does like to spin. I think Grealish receiving in those wide areas, what you're going to get with him when he's on the ball as well is not only those through balls we mentioned there, looking for those passes, but also carrying so well, carrying inside. The stat we mentioned before, ranked number 1 for Aston Villa for not only passes into the box, but carries into the box as well. So that's a big thing there, that you've got the rest of the City team committing bodies forward, potentially in that central area after a Grealish carry, which would tactically slightly change Manchester City. There'd be a little bit more diverse team. Of course, the other thing we mentioned previously about the wide players and why I think Grealish should probably use more centrally is because the wide players frequently are used as these options in behind the defence. That's not to say Grealish couldn't facilitate that role. He's got a great first touch and abilities to bring the ball down and slow defenders down in these areas. 1v1 he excels, so we could see that at the same time. Grealish, of course, is a good finisher. 6 goals in the Premier League last season with limited minutes. We know that he can, slow himself down in those areas. Maybe that's an area where Pep could even improve Jack Grealish in that sort of position, getting into the box and finishing. And finally, false 9. We've seen when Bernardo Silva plays for Man City, very much plays in that false 9 position off the line with Kevin De Bruyne. Very fluid setup. We could see that again with Jack Grealish. If we're thinking Phil Foden, who excelled on that left wing in the back end of the season, could be in that sort of wide player. You'd say probably Phil Foden is a better finisher than Jack Grealish, whereas Grealish is more of a playmaker. So you could see that position where Jack Grealish actually plays as a false 9 in this City setup. And again, I think the fluidity we mentioned previously would be the same thing there with Ilkay Gundogan, with Kevin De Bruyne, and it could be absolutely frightening. And then you've got more natural width with Mahrez, with Phil Foden in those areas. But I think long term, if we're looking at the signing of Harry Kane, which potentially could happen, I think Grealish will facilitate a role for Man City, receiving the ball in these maybe deeper areas, and carrying through. One thing we saw with City last season was the use of that kind of midfield diamond in a sense. Let's throw Zinchenko in for argument's sake. And throw Cancelo to that right fullback position or inverted right wing back position. Back three made up of Stones, Diaz, Zinchenko, Rodri, Cancelo in midfield, and we could see a bit of a diamond in there with Jack Grealish, with Kevin De Bruyne in those central areas. I think one of the things that you could have that's a little bit different to Kevin De Bruyne's Grealish ability to carry through lines and pressure and draw people in, which I think could be crucial, not only in City's build-up in these deeper areas to receive and then spin. The big thing we know with Bernardo Silva and what he does so well for City is receiving out of the press, then carrying back across to free Kevin De Bruyne, to then free Harry Kane or Riyad Mahrez or Phil Foden. It is absolutely frightening. But anyway, guys, what do you make of the signing of Jack Grealish to Manchester City? Of course, it adds another level of complexity to this Manchester City team and potentially could be the missing link for them winning their first ever European Cup. Right, guys, there's my thoughts on Jack Grealish's move to Manchester City. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Of course, if you are new to the Statman Dave Clips channel, please hit that subscribe button, like that goddamn video, and we will see you next time.